Live from the Pitch Pad in New York City. Get ready to unleash your inner entrepreneur with Pitch Live with Amy Summers. Whether you're a seasoned entrepreneur or just dipping your toes into the Shark Tank, this is the place to be to discover how to turn your pitch into reality. Fasten your seatbelts, pitch stars, because the spotlight is on you and we are about to make success happen. Get ready for Pitch Live in 3, 2, 1. Hi, everybody. Welcome to this episode 24 of Pitch Live. This is a special edition because we have reached the end of season 1. So first of all, I just want to thank all of you who have come along on this journey with me in this first year of Pitch Live. And if you're just finding us now, I hope that this episode will give you a quick recap of how our season went. But before I get into that, I just wanted to get some background on why I started this podcast. I get that question a lot. So I really started Pitch Live, not because I wanted to start a podcast necessarily, but I started working on writing a book. And it was really stressed to me several times. Well, if you're going to be an author, you need to have a podcast. Maybe some of you have heard this before. So I kind of went into it reluctantly at first, especially since I already have a microcast called The Pitch with Amy Summers. It is the top 10 in the top 10% of all podcasts listened to globally. And I've been working on that for multiple years now. It can be heard everywhere. The microcast is my short form podcast. I don't interview guests on it. Each episode is less than 3 minutes. I just give communication tips out on that one. So the idea of having guests and doing this longer form podcast really just seemed like a heavy lift. But, I try to take on the advice of others, and they were all saying, if you're going to be an author, you're really going to need to have a podcast. So I went ahead and started Pitch Live with the format of interviewing experts in the field that have really shown the value of pitching, because I always say that you can use the skill of pitching in any area of your life. And I really wanted to show in this podcast that with all the business professionals that I was interviewing, the diverse fields that they work in. So we have covered all kinds of different industries: food and beverage, entertainment, politics. The list goes on and on. So you'll have to check out season 1. And it's really been fun and has also proven my theory that you really do use the skill of pitching in every single industry. It is so important for your success. And so each month I have been interviewing one professional that I, look at their career and say, wow, they really made success happen. They MSH their way to the top. And we have a discussion about how they use the art of pitching to get there. And then every month I also interview one of my former team members from Pitch Publicity. So this has been a lot of fun for me. And some of you may have been thinking, why is she interviewing all these people that used to work for her? And the reason is because at this point in time, I've launched about 50 careers through my mentorship program and internship program at Pitch Publicity. And some of the people I've interviewed have actually been employees of my company in the past. And so I wanted to check in with them, see where they are now, and find out how they are using the skills of pitching that they learned at Pitch Publicity early on in their career. How are they applying it now? Because I thought that would be really interesting. It also is going to go really along with my book that's coming out, that's going to feature a lot of their stories. So I think that their interviews will definitely make more sense to you once the book comes out. And it might be the type of podcast that you want to binge at that point. But for me, going back and interviewing them has just been such a delight, and staying connected to them because I see each and every one of them as somebody that I have mentored early on in their career. And to hear from them that whether I spent a month with them in some cases, or if I spent 3 years or more with them, some of the mentorship that I've given them has been really impactful in their careers. And I wanted to show that
that this was possible. And that's going to be a big theme in the book. I've also been asking a lot of the professionals I've been interviewing, who mentored them and how do they get mentorship? You might be thinking, why does she keep asking about mentorship? The book I'm writing is really going to look at mentorship in a different way and open our eyes to all of the resources that we have around us. I think in a lot of ways, we've made mentorship a lot more difficult than it needs to be. So that's a little bit of background on Pitch Live and why I started it. I can say now, after completing a full season, a full year, that it has actually been really empowering to do this podcast. It's helped me personally connect with a lot of professionals and a lot of people that used to work at Pitch Publicity, actively connecting with them. And I think that is so important to have that human connection in everything that we do in business. So in that regard, it's been a lot of fun. And we've had a lot of fun learning about different strategies and methods that they're using. I've had many people reach out to me and say that they really enjoyed different episodes. So I thought it would be fun today to just go through some of the episodes from season 1. So let's start out with those business professionals I interviewed this season. They were so insightful. We got so many tips from them. The episodes were really jam-packed. Some of my favorites, obviously the first episode, Kim Kaupe, she was such a Shark Tank star. And so that's why I wanted her on the show to just start it off, because I think a lot of times when people think about pitching, they think about that Shark Tank show. And so I really liked hearing from Kim about how she prepared for Shark Tank. And I think that if anybody is thinking about going on Shark Tank or a show like that, you'll definitely want to listen to her tips, listen in on some of her tips on how she prepared. For everyone that maybe hasn't seen the episode, what happened as a result? I know that you had 4 out of 5 offers. What did you do with those offers? Did you take any of them on? And how did you make that decision on what to do next?
Yeah. So in real life, we actually did not go through with the offer with, spoiler alert, Robert and Lori. If you haven't watched the episode, what we realized after, it's kind of like getting married on the first date. And you're kind of like, well, let's get a chance to get to know each other. Maybe we don't want to get married, because I always say taking money or taking an investment from people, that is a marriage. That is a legally binding contract connecting you with another human being or a private equity or an entity of some sort. And just like it's amazing to me how in business, I think people will so willy-nilly kind of accept money from anyone. But at the same token, if you ask them if they want to marry their girlfriend of 3 years, they're like, oh, well, I don't know if I'm ready. I'm like, well, you just took money from Joe Schmo, who you've known for like a week. So you don't really know that guy. And now you're business married to him. So, it really is like a marriage. So we were really adamant to kind of get to know them, dig in deep. And what we realized mutually is, we're better off as friends or dating buddies. We shouldn't actually get married. So we have a wonderful relationship. We actually helped Lori with a bunch of stuff after the show, after we decided not to do a deal when she was redoing her website and her branding and stuff. So we get along with their teams fabulously. We just kind of realized, like, I don't know if we want to get actual business married. And that happens quite a bit on the show. About 11 to 15% of deals that you see that get done on the show actually happen in real life. So that means the other 85 to 90% do not end up going through. They don't actually get married after meeting for the first time.
Another business professional that I thought had great pitching advice from the stage, and this is at a live event, was in episode 3. So check out Neil's episode 3. He is co-founder of Jazzberry. Jazzberry is a very innovative rice product that is serving not only the planet, but the people who harvested it. It has a really good story, but I love how Neil really prepared on stage. And I think that it's very nerve-wracking to get on stage and pitch. So check out his tips on what he does right before he gets on stage. do you have any rules? Like, do you practice all the way up until you walk up on stage, or do you give yourself a whole day of a break from it? Or what is your exact strategy before you do something like that?
It's a little bit like top level athlete. Like if you're gonna play a match, like a World Cup final or something, you're not practicing an hour before the match, right? You're you're listening to music, you're relaxing your mind, right? You have to trust yourself. And for me, it's similar. Like I'm not practicing at least a few hours before that I go on stage. I normally meditate. I keep my mind to the most calm, peaceful state as much as possible. I think the key for me is pacing, because pitch slam is under pressure in terms of timing and everything. So you have to really be comfortable with your pacing and understand when you can speed up and when you can slow down, and have total control of that. It's like driving a car. When are you going to speed up? When you're going to slow down? You got to get to the destination within a certain time. And I think that you got to give yourself enough room of pacing yourself. And that's why the practice come in. I think the pacing part of it is the foundation of it, because if you have the wrong pace, like if you're too slow or you're too fast, you're really gonna run into a lot of problem, because you're either gonna finish too early and you're rushing through your pitch and no one understand a word, or you're slow and you don't actually get to the end of your story. So I think the pace is kind of the foundation of, it's like the rhythm when you play music, right? Or when you dance, you have a rhythm, and you need to keep to those rhythm. And I think that's why the practice comes in. Like sometimes, I would joke, right? I would like have fun. I'll pitch to my staff in my office, and then I'll stop, and they have their stopwatch, and I'll be like, I'm guessing it's 1 minute 47 seconds. I don't have the time, and they go like, it's like 1 minute 46 and a half. But I even within my brain, I can almost calculate the time because I know my pace.
Another favorite episode of mine from the business world was Shelley Spector. She's founder of the Museum of Public Relations. And I remember the first time I heard that there was a Museum of Public Relations, I was so shocked. Of course, this is an industry that I worked in. I didn't know there was such a thing. And what I loved about Shelley's story was that it really reminded me of Mad Men, like an episode of Mad Men. She literally came up through the ranks during that time. And I think that was a time that was very tough for women. And I just love how she made it through that time period and then saw this opportunity to go out and start her own business, which she did very successfully. Take a listen.
There were no role models back then.
I feel like you just described the opening scene of Mad Men when you walk in and you have all the women over here, and you're like Elizabeth Moss walking in and not knowing where to go.
Well, let me tell you that I identify very strongly with Peggy, from her drinking with the guys, and her not knowing where she stood, and her differentiating herself from the secretaries with the basket of kisses. I look back, and that's kind of what I did, except I didn't have lipsticks as my client. I had banks and an energy company.
So what was your first idea that you really recall that was like a major pitching moment when you pitched something at the office?
I heard that the company was doing something called coal liquefaction. And this was during the middle of the oil crisis in the 70s, or right after it. And this was, if this company figured out how to melt coal and make it into oil, that would be a great thing. So I wanted to explain this to a mainstream audience. Now, remember, I'm only 23 at this point, and I wrote out a whole storyboard for how we can do a video of this, even though there wasn't video back then, or film of this. And I sent it to 60 Minutes.
Oh, wow.
Here, I took a big leap in sending it to, of all places, 60 Minutes. Because I figured, let them turn it down and then I'll go somewhere else. Now, how I had the nerve to send it to the executive producer, because I found his name in the direct. Yeah. And I sent it to him, and his secretary called me up a week later. and said he wants to have lunch with you.
Oh, this is back in the day when you got a lunch invitation.
Well, yes, and I was too naive to realize that what he really wanted was not to learn more about coal liquefaction.
Oh, okay.
Okay, but I was pitching the idea to him, and then he said, I got us a hotel room.
Oh, this is like Mad
yeah.
Men. Episode 7 with Akeem Shannon of Flipstick was so much fun. Now, Akeem and I did not know each other before we did the podcast interview. He actually pitched me. He was the only one this season that reached out and pitched me and got on the show. So I have to hand it to Akeem for that. And he was just so much fun. I could have talked to him for a really long time. It seemed like we knew each other the way our energy came about in the podcast. But he did something that I was so surprised that he did. He actually gave us the rap that he used to get Snoop Dogg's attention about his flipstick. And so I just want to share that piece with you because it was very impromptu and I asked him to do it and he did it. How did you weave your story into your pitch and into a rap?
Well, I got to be honest. I didn't come here to rap. Came to talk about my business, as a matter of fact. Might start a feeding frenzy as I spit on this track. So I asked all the sharks, sit back and relax. Flipstick is the brand. If you already heard about it, raise your hand. It's a kickstand on demand with Flipstick. Gravity is under your command. Let me repeat for those who missed it. To any flat surface, your phone will stick. Get it wet, but the stickiness will persist. Tell you how I thought it up if time permits. Flipstick is the brand. If you already heard about it, raise your hand. It's a kickstand on demand with Flipstick. Gravity is under your command.
Amazing. Episode 9 with Sansan Fibri of Wakefully was it was a lot of fun. Sansan and I know each other as friends, so we run into some people professionally often, and someone will say, "Oh, Sansan told me to call you," and they'll always ask me, "How did you meet Sansan?" And I say, "Oh, you have to watch our podcast because now I've got the whole story captured, and here's just a glimpse of it."
I was on a rooftop bar in New York City celebrating a show that I sold to Comedy Central. So the place was packed. There was no place to sit, and I was wearing impossible heels. And I was just in agony. So I saw that in one of the couches around, there was a single seat in the whole place that was available next to a distinguished looking man. And I said, "Excuse me, sir, do you mind if I sit here?" And he says, "Well, I'm waiting for my publicist, but, if it's okay when she comes that you can move." I said, "Yeah, of course, no problem. I just needed to sit." I was going to say whatever it took. And when you walked in, you immediately reminded me one of my best friends, and just somebody I love very much. And I don't know, I felt that affinity right away. So we made this rule. We had so much fun together that we made this pact that we always have to be on a rooftop, meaning it doesn't have to take all of the night, but there's going to be a section of the night where we're going to be on a rooftop if we're going out and about.
Episode 11, Timothy McLemore, Essential Haas. Ugh, Timothy truly has my heart. He worked with us. I took him on as a pro bono client because he pitched me on the phone. He called me, he pitched me. He really has so much passion for the work he's doing for the LGBTQ plus community. And I just admire how he pushes through and he's always finding another network. I was very impressed with how he reached out to his to his college and really got some momentum going with a bride walk. Here's a little bit on that. But is there like a moment where you're like, okay, I MSA, and I made success happen, and that you're really proud about? Can you give us a success story?
Yes. Just recently, actually, I was able to participate in my previous university's college bride walk that they do every year since 2011. It's an awareness walk for victims and those that have lost their lives due to domestic violence. And I was able to participate this year. The school gave me a grant, and I was allowed to come up and, I know, right, Amy? Speak and share some of my story and raise awareness on how this affects the LGBTQ community. And the most beautiful part of it is it's a private Catholic university. So just knowing that we're really breaking barriers and we're filling gaps in the system and access to resources, it's so fulfilling. I that's one of my most successful accomplishments so far.
Wow. So this was the university that you attended and graduated from.
Yes, very
Barry University.
Mhm.
It's a Catholic university. I mean, that's so rewarding, right? I mean, I just know that, like, so many graduates and alumni, but when you get recognized by your college like that, that's so fulfilling. So congratulations.
Thank you, Amy.
And it must have been really affirming too.
Very affirming, validated. I mean, just the whole nine. And I'm looking forward to doing it again next year.
Episode 13 is a must-see. Mark Allen, Late Night Health Radio. Anybody that has ever worked with me has probably pitched Mark Allen at some point in time. I have been pitching Mark Allen my entire career, I feel like. So we go back, way back. And it was fun to catch up with him. He's been in broadcast for a very long time. I think what I enjoyed the most about Mark's interview was his confession to me that he did try to go into PR and it didn't work out so well. Take a listen. So one thing I didn't see on your LinkedIn, and you mentioned it briefly, was your stint in PR. So I would like to know about that. So you started out in broadcast journalism. If you're watching on YouTube, Mark just fainted.
Yeah, we did that. I mentioned that to you, I think, when I was at your place in New York with Carol, and over the holidays, we had a great time with you and Winnie. In fact, I've got this little thing that you gave me, a photo thing, and I see all my family, but the one non-family is you, me, and Winnie. Anyway, what happened was that I'd been a talk show host in Memphis and was fired. And I came home and I needed work. And I ended up working for 1, 2, 3, 4 PR firms.
Oh, wow.
I know. The first one was, we worked in this woman's kind of, I don't know, conference room in her home. And there were 4 of us. I was the senior publicist. I directed the other people.
Mm-hmm.
And she would come to me and say, Mark, I think you've worked hard enough today. You can go home. This was every Friday. Would hand me a check and said, go to the bank now. The others may not clear. I got out of that one quick. Next one is a publicist that I'd worked with in being pitched at, and she offered me a job. And I still work with her. I still am in touch with her. Her clients are featured on Late Night Health or the cooking show. And I also do some production work for her, video production work. And then there was a third one. And then the fourth one, I actually ended up running 4 or 5 account execs plus the video production. I did not like doing PR. I just didn't.
Well, episode 15, Erica Lowe, the White House. Oh my gosh, this episode stressed me out. So a lot of the episodes I record in advance, and then, we prepare them so that they can go out on a schedule. And I remember being so excited to interview Erica because she's working at the White House, and this 2024 year that I started this podcast was a major election year. But things started to get a little bit nuts with the politics. We had Joe Biden running for president, and then there was a moment in time where I wasn't sure he was going to run for president anymore. So I had to really rush to get her episode out when Kamala took over. And I think what I liked most about Erica's was just learning about the importance of Black media and how important Black media is on when it comes to pitching and telling stories, and how they've always been so important. Listen to what she has to say. You mentioned mainstream media, the big guys like CNN and Fox News, and, you know, we wanted to make sure that, you know, Black media also had front row access. How is Black media different than mainstream media in reporting? If you had to describe it to someone, what makes it different?
You know, and I'm probably, I don't want to misquote Madam Vice President, but I remember when the president signed an anti-lynching bill, and the descendants of Ida B. Wells happened to be there, and they were a part of the celebration because Ida B. Wells often uncovered a lot of the injustices that were happening in the country to her great risk. And I remember the vice president saying that, you know, Black media were the truth tellers and the storytellers and the ones who were willing to tell stories that others were not. And I think that, or I know, that is how Black media started. You know, in the mainstream press, it was often taboo to share photos or just narratives of the injustices that were happening in this country. For instance, when Emmett Till was murdered, it was Jet Magazine and it was the Chicago Defender that were the outlets that were brave enough to show his beaten and brutalized face to the world, horrifying the country. You know, Black media had to do that because the mainstream media entities weren't going to do it. And they did not do it until Black media forced them to.
Taking the filter off. Here's what's really happening. You know, I don't know if you have time to watch shows or at all, probably not, but HBO has The Gilded Age. And, you know, if anybody watches that show, they can really see the importance of Black media during the 1800s right here in New York City where I live. So it's kind of fascinating for me to watch. There's a character called Peggy Scott. She's played by Floridian Danae Benton. And, you know, it's interesting to watch exactly what you said. They were the truth tellers, 1800s. I mean, there was a lot of lynchings and things going on. They were even traveling from New York to the South. They had one episode to kind of show all of this. How has it changed today? I mean, here we are, 2024. Is it changed at all, or is it still a lot of that, you know, a lot of stories that are not getting out?
I think that, you know, Black media still very much shows its value, oftentimes by just focusing on story. There's such a demand for attention everywhere, as I'm sure you know, and it's very hard to get media, the American public, to really focus on anything because we're in this like 24-hour news cycle. There's social media and the like. And I think, you know, where Black media continues to find its niche area and add value to the population is that their 24/7 news coverage is focused on the stories that are priorities for the Black community. And that's just not going to be the case anywhere else.
Episode 17, Howard Schiffer, founder of Vitamin Angels. Now, Howard and I go way back. I always tell this story that I started working with Howard when he was only a team of like 2 people and himself. And I remember working with Howard on his very first fundraiser and the first few fundraisers he did in those early years of Vitamin Angels. And this was during a time where we weren't really documenting a lot on social media. So what I enjoyed the most about this interview was really going back and revisiting that story and capturing it, because those early years of starting something is the most exciting in my line of work. And I know that Howard's not the type of person that likes to look back because he's always going forward, but I loved our moment together that we could actually look back. And here's just a little clip from that.
One of the people on the board, Tom Arts, who you know, and I went to the first Organic Center fundraiser, And it was like nothing the industry had ever seen before. I mean, usually fundraisers where a few people got up on stage and they did their pitch, but this was a show. I mean, this was a big production, and it was a mission possible. It was about, I think, getting 10% of the food industry into organics.
That's what I did with Anthony.
Yes. So that really got our attention. And remember, Tom leaned over and said, we have to do this for Vitamin Angels. We had never done a big event. And so the next year we started, putting together a big event. We had no experience doing it. We were in over our heads from the get-go. The board was really not supportive of it. They thought it was just going to be distracting to the work. And at the 11th hour, literally, I think in August, I think the fundraiser was going to be in September. In August, we realized that we did not have the right people running it. We had somebody who wanted to do a very low-key event and have kind of a sepia tone pictures and people doing Tai Chi. And I realized I had no confidence that was going to work. And Anthony Zalesi, who became one of our board members, and who had done the Organic Center event with you, offered to come in and help us. And he said, no, you have to do something with, really dynamic and exciting and, have something that people will be engaged about. And he introduced us to you. So it's very kind of you and generous to say that, we hired you to do it, but honestly, you saved our life. I mean, that event would not have happened and certainly would not have been as exciting as it was. I mean, we had 2 separate rooms. People went from a New York nightclub into the world that we work in. We had gotten, Tom had found somebody to pay for our first major video, which you helped put together. That was really exciting. I mean, it was a transformative event.
All right, episode 19, Marcy Zeroff is a must watch. This woman is so amazing. She has done so many things in her career when it comes to eco fashion. She even coined the term eco fashion. Marcy and I have known each other for a very long time. She is such a pitching pro. She's been on HSN and QVC, and she's surrounded herself with investors and celebrities and retailers and all of these really big names that really want to support her cause. But at the same time, she's completely authentic. The part that I actually enjoyed the most about Marcy's episode was when she talked about her mentor and just how really important it is to have mentors early in your career. And I think that had she not had this mentor who founded Aveda, maybe her path and her journey would have gone a completely different direction. Listen to what she has to say. We talked a lot about mentorship on this show. You definitely embrace mentorship in your community approach. Do you have mentors? Do you seek mentors at this stage of your career?
So I'm very, very lucky. And my mentor of 25 years was the founder of Aveda, Horst Reckelbacher. I met Horst at an environmental conference in not to age myself here, but I think in the late 80s. My girlfriend who had given me the book, Living in the Light, that I mentioned, she was actually a hairdresser. And so she was exposed to Veda when it was one product and sort of turned me on to it. And I remember very vividly when she gave me the product, it was a clove shampoo and I smelled it. And it was like a drug. I mean, it literally went my whole body, I was like, oh, that's intoxicating. And then I read the label and it talked about plant wisdom and indigenous cultures and, and I'm moved by what I learned, but what led me into the product was, the scent and ultimately the way it worked. So Horst taught me a lot about, the way to package conscious living, right? Through leading people on that sort of aesthetic, visceral level, and then taking them down that proverbial rabbit hole of the why and the what and the how and the where and the when, but doing it in an elegant, beautiful way. So he was a real force in my life. He passed away a handful of years ago. He wrote the foreword to my book, Eco Renaissance. Eric and I got married at his house on 11/11/11. And I also got to speak at his funeral and pay tribute to him. So yeah, he was a major influence in my life. And with that, I try to give back as much as I can. I have a very busy life, but when people reach out to me, even if it's a 10 or 15-minute call or answering a question, as much as I can, not always, but, I do try to be there for others.
Episode 21, Anthony Zalesi. Oh, he is my mentor. One of my first clients when I started Pitch Publicity. I was so excited to talk to Anthony because he is just full of stories, full of inspiration, full of motivation. I remember the day that I was going to record with Anthony. He sent me this long email about how he doesn't want to talk about anything in the past, and he just wants to talk about things that are happening now and moving forward. And in a panic, I called him because I really did want to talk about all of his successes from the past because they were so big. And luckily, he agreed with me, and we got to talk a lot about Bubba Gump Shrimp and the Forrest Gump movie and how that inspired an idea for him. And funny enough, that same day that we aired his episode, I had a college student from Penn State write me a really nice, thoughtful note saying how much she enjoyed his episode, especially hearing about how he built Bubba Gump Shrimp, and that he gave some really good advice about showing up with a smile that really resonated with her. Listen to what he had to say. So Bubba Gump Shrimp Company, people probably know that because they've seen the restaurants.
Sure.
And I want you to take us back to the shrimp scene. What was connecting and firing in your brain? Because you were working with shrimpers. Can you explain what connected where you're like, okay, I'm going to take this movie and make it into a restaurant?
Yeah. So I was hired by a company called Meridian Products to see if I could restructure. So I was doing a lot of restructuring, crisis management, that type of thing. Their sales were just falling. It was like, we call it a falling knife. It's not something you want to grab. You want to stay away from it. But obviously, I got into it. I thought I could fix this company. And the truth is, I was 9 months into it, and I reported to a group of bankers. I was going in on that Monday to tell them I couldn't turn it, that they needed to probably just liquidate and take whatever they could out of it. And so I went to the movie on Sunday, and I was resigning the following Monday. I just couldn't turn this company around.
Can we pause right there for a second? Because you just made me remember something. I remember you telling me a long time ago that you would go to movies when you were stressed out about things. Was that one of these moments where you had to?
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. I used to, when I was really stressed during, especially turnaround situations, when you have to eliminate a lot of people, it's just a very stressful time. And I'd take off and go to 2 or 3 o'clock movies. I knew where they were, and I did that all the time. And this was one of the times too, but it was a Sunday afternoon. I was with my wife, and we were making an afternoon of it. But when I saw that scene, I don't know why, I'll never forget it. But they were scrubbing the floor, and Bubba was doing chili shrimp and Cajun shrimp. I just stood up in the theater and I said, "That's it." But I said, now what do I do? So just the next morning, that was a Sunday afternoon. The next morning, I went straight to Paramount. I got with the guard and I said, I got to see somebody about the movie Forrest Gump and the rights to the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company. I got there at 8:30, 6:30, they saw me. And the woman's name was Debbie Petrasic. I'll never forget her as long as I live. She said, "You want what?" And I said, "I want the license for the movie Forrest Gump, the Bubba Gump Shrimp Company." And she said, "We don't have any licenses. We don't think the movie's going to do that well." And I said, "What?" I said, "Then can I get the license for shrimp?" She said, "Oh, yeah." I said, "Can I get chocolates?" She said, "Oh, yeah." I started going right down. Can I get the hats? Can I get the tees? So I started going down the whole list, and she said yes. And I said, how much? She said $25,000. I said, I'll be here tomorrow with the check. And then I was walking out, and I said, how about international rights? She said, no problem, another 25. I said, I'll bring 50,000 tomorrow.
Did you have a meeting with her? Did you have an official meeting with her, or were you just camped out on their doorstep?
No, I just stayed there till someone saw me. The most powerful tool I've had in my career is just showing up, and showing up with a smile.
Episode 23, Dr. Wendy Walsh. Now, Dr. Wendy Walsh is a relationship expert. She has her own podcast. We have booked several clients on her show before. So I wanted to have her on my show because I often tell people that pitching skills could be used in relationships too. I mean, how do you get a date? How do you ask people out? How do you keep those relationships going? So I thought it would be really fun to find out from her how pitching is used in relationships and listen to what she had to say about it.
So I think the most important thing, when people understand that they're selling themselves, we don't want to sell a billboard of us. We want to sell our intimate self. And the best way to do that is either through some self-deprecating humor so that you realize that you're human and you have some flaws, or a story, a short story that illustrates who you are and what you've done. I do want to say this about dating profiles. They're little brochures. So don't write too much. On the other hand, don't write too little. I think, 4 or 5 sentences is all you need, because all you're trying to do is get the match, and then you can move into real talking. But ask yourself, the worst profiles are the ones with laundry lists. I am vegan, dog-loving, Protestant, whatever, and you are blah, 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 because all of a sudden we become these caricatures of humans instead of being authentic. So it's not a good idea to say, this is what I'm looking for and this is who I am. It's more like saying, hey, just hang him a heart out here, hoping somebody might take a hook. Let's see how it goes. I'm nervous, be real and write that. Why not?
That's interesting that you say that, because I was actually at a taping for the Drew Barrymore show. And after the show was done, she gets down on stage and just talks to the audience. And it's really funny that she brought this up, but she brought up her dating app profile, which I didn't even know celebrities like that put themselves out there. But she said that a friend had told her that she needed to change her dating app profile because she had written things like, I don't want to get married. And this is she was very specific about things. So you kind of mentioned that. Do you agree with that? Should you not be that clear on what?
And also you can convey a lot of information through the photographs, right? Mm-hmm. There's lots of research to show that photographs that are photoshopped or filtered or have too much makeup on are never good, because as one guy said to me once, when you look at a woman's dating profile, try to find the most or the least attractive photograph and tell yourself she looks close to that. Right? Because that's what we do. We put on the best looking ones. And if there's one we choose because we're kind of like, oh, but it shows me, then we know that's mostly what we look like.
Okay. Now the PitchStar interviews. I want to talk about all of these wonderful people that have worked with Pitch Publicity and worked with me before. I see all of them as mentees, and it was so rewarding to go back and talk to them. Let's start at the top with Episode 2, Victoria. Victoria had such a great story of success. I love that she was able to get to New York right away after college and just take on the advertising world, which is so hard to do in the first place, but especially in New York. And what I really loved about Victoria was that she really saw herself as an entrepreneur and as a businesswoman herself, and has already started on that path. Take a listen. What's been one of your proudest pitching moments in your advertising career in New York?
So I actually think, I was talking about interviewing, but I recently, a year ago, decided to move or shift my career and start working as a freelancer and as a I get hired as a contractor at different advertising agencies or brands. And I think that my proudest thing is that with that, it's not a full-time job. I'm contracted on certain projects for a limited amount of time. And there was 1 week last year that I didn't have a job. And that's really scary. And that was that's the fear that you have when you go into this freelancing contractor life, is that you won't have a job at one point and you won't have that kind of security of having something stable. And what I did that week was my week of pitching myself, reaching out to every person that I had ever came in contact with, whether that was in college, when I first moved to New York, in my first job, people that I interacted with. I reached out to hundreds of people via email, LinkedIn, and set up these phone calls that I posed as, I'd love to chat with you about your career and how you've gotten here. And then I sprinkled in my pitch, which was, this is everything I've done, where I want to go, and how I could be beneficial to you. And since then, that has been the only week that I have not had a job. And it kind of set me up for success in this freelancing contractor world, because now more often than not, I'm turning down jobs and not reaching out for jobs. And I kind of set myself up so that people knew that I was available, knew that I was doing this. And that, I'm really proud of that, because the biggest thing that people told me when I was asking for advice before I made this jump into freelancing world is that there will be times where you won't have a job, and be careful of that. And I saw other people like having to work at a restaurant or having to get a part-time job just to fill the space. And I'm really proud that I was able to kind of set myself up for success in that 1 week that I did have that lull, and use my pitching skills to set up the rest of the year.
Yeah, it really lights a fire when you can't buy groceries. You got to figure out,
Yeah,
you have to figure out how to MSH and make shit happen like immediately. So episode 4 was with Afreka Ebanks, who is near and dear to my heart. Afreka and I have stayed connected so much ever since she interned with me when she was a student in college. And I really enjoyed talking to Afreka. She's very thoughtful. She's very intuitive about things. And I really like some of the advice that she gave. And I want to give you just a taste of it. Where are you getting mentored? How do you seek out mentorship?
Yes. I will say, I think since college with this program, and also I had a mentor through the program when I was like a freshman, I came to understand tremendous and sort of life-changing value that mentorship is and can be for someone's life. And so nowadays I still continue to seek that out, because as a young person, I don't have all the answers. I don't have all the experiences. So I'm continuously looking for people who are in maybe different industries that I'm interested in, or have certain job titles or certain aspirations that I'm also aspiring for, and looking for their guidance on how to motivate myself and how to move through the world, and even the city, which is so unique in comparison to living in Florida. So I attend a lot of events, and I'm always sort of presenting an open mind to meeting new people and conversing with them and connecting with them, and just asking, I'm a young person. I don't have all the answers. Can you please help me figure it out? And they're usually so receptive, which is incredible. So I think I will probably continue to seek out mentorship in many ways, and also offer it to as many people as I can.
Episode 6 with Taylor Hadden. Oh, wow. I have to say, this has been one of the most popular episodes. This one in Victoria, for sure. But Taylor's, I've had so many comments on this. If you go to YouTube, people commenting on her episode and just her transparency on, pitching, and also just when things don't go right at work. And I think that has resonated with so many people. I want you to hear what she has to say about being human. We talk about the benefits of mentorship and finding mentorship, but I know, and we don't have to name names, but I know sometimes we run into people that don't really want to help you out. And I know that you have run into those people before. So I'd really like to talk about this aspect of it. When you run into professionals or people that you admire that kind of just shut you down or hold you back from success, how do you navigate around that and not get discouraged and not think that hey, everyone is out to get you and that there's not a mentor for you? Because I know you've had both. You've had me. Of course, I've not roadblocked you. I know you've had others that have kind of roadblocked you, right?
100%. I think this is like a faceted sort of conversation to attack it at. I think oftentimes, especially if you have a manager or like a mentor that you work with closely at your job and you feel like you're not getting the attention you need and the advocacy you need, I like to think that most of the times it's nothing personal, because I know, especially in like the buzz of a hustle bustle agency, like a lot of those people who are at the senior level are already stacked so high with so many responsibilities, and they aren't given enough time to properly mentor and advocate for their junior level folks. So I like to think about that. Another thing I think that I did in the past that I have changed since when entering these sorts of situations was that I would just take it and try to take the good out of it. I would try to take the critique or the criticism or the thing that I could improve upon and like let go of any of the more emotionally weighted, like personal attacky sort of statements. But that can only do you good for so long. And unfortunately, I think like the proxy of being at being in a junior level, starting somewhere new, is that you don't feel like you have the opportunity to speak up, like you don't have a position to speak up because, again, you are the newbie and you just got to work hard and like keep quiet. But the reality is, like, the more that I have like moved up in little increments and now I'm here at Waxman, if I feel like I'm being roadblocked or that there is like a weird rift between me and a manager, or even somebody that I work with, somebody that I manage, I just throw 30 on their calendar and start off with some like fun, like conversation, something to kind of put everyone's tensions at ease, and then kind of go right to the issue in a really candid way and say, hey, like, I've just noticed X, Y, and Z, or maybe you worded something to me in a way, this is how it made me feel. Do you want to talk about it? And then leave the mic to them, open the floor for them. And usually if you attack it from that very human level, you'll often get a pretty good result. You'll be able to work hand in hand with them to not only maybe even get the apology that you deserve sometimes, but the like step-by-step plan of like how we're going to make things better moving forward.
Episode 8, Jacob McLean. Jacob and I have done so many fabulous things together. And Jacob's story is really one of perseverance. I think that he has always been a striver. He's always been striving for like the next thing. And he really doesn't let rejection get him down. He pushes through on it. And that's what I think I respect the most about Jacob, is he just doesn't take no as a no. He just keeps coming back. He did it with me because he got rejected from Pitch right at the beginning, but he just kept coming back. Here's what he has to say about it. And I want to just jump right in and dissect how you've made success happen, or as you know, I always call it MSH, make shit happen. You're really good at it. And I want to talk first about just your persistence, because it's really, persistence in pitching is so important. And Jacob did not learn this skill from me. I'm actually not really sure where he learned it from. He can tell us, but it's an important skill to have. And it was evident that he was very persistent in our interview process. Can you talk to us a little bit about the first time you interviewed with me and what happened?
Yeah. Well, I remember interviewing for the first time for the internship with the Gator Alumni Clubs. It was January of 2020. I actually had just moved to Gainesville maybe a week earlier. I didn't know anyone. I was kind of, just dropped in the middle there. So I, booked a classroom and went in there, and I will be honest that I completely flopped the interview. I felt like at that time, perhaps maybe I hadn't like fully come out of my shell yet when it comes to just being comfortable speaking in front of people and really pitching yourself. And I think I was so worried about, getting the script perfect, not veering from the script and, saying exactly what I needed to say. And I think that, I was just so worried about how I was going to be perceived that it completely just kind of sputtered and, crashed a little bit. But it was a really big learning experience because, I got to self-reflect and, really think this is what you should do differently. And, this is how you can improve upon yourself.
Episode 10 with Gillian Stoney. I am so proud of Gillian. I think my favorite story about Gillian is when I first interviewed her, she just came off so shy, and she is not that way today. I think pitching has really turned her around. Listen to our story about how we first met. Out of all the interviews I've conducted through the years, yours really sticks out to me the most. I remember actually I interviewed you in person because we were at a restaurant near the University of Florida campus where you were in school at the time. And I remember not hiring you the first time around, but I would love to hear this first meeting from your perspective. What was that first interview like with me? What did you learn from it? If you could do anything differently, would you go back in time and change that first interview? What was that like for you?
Well, it's funny. So during that time, I was really trying to start to get into public relations, and they always try to tell you to try to do internships, and so it was kind of my first time really doing a lot of interviews. I worked with the call center at the time, which was kind of something that with your agency to call and to pitch and stuff, I thought it would be a great opportunity and a combination there. But, interview is always challenging because you're basically trying to sell yourself. And how do you do that and present it in a way that is unique to that specific company or agency that you're trying to get the job for? So for me, I was very nervous. I had a few interviews before, and it was just really like a waiting game. And a lot of them were over the phone. So being able to do kind of like an in-person one, you're trying to really present and people can actually see your expressions and how you actually are and can kind of connect with them. So it was very nerve-wracking as a first time like interviewer. You haven't really done any job interviews or anything like that yet. So I was a little nervous. But I always think back to trying to sell yourself. And I think with every interview, you get a little bit better because then you kind of see if you are in person, it does help because then you see the person's interaction with you to some of the questions that you're answering, or you see kind of like a little bit of their movement. So body language is another big thing that you kind of see. And that's something that you learn from because a lot of the questions when you're in interviews are very similar. What brings you to this company? What have you been doing? How can you help us grow? So a lot of those things do come up over and over again, and being able to see the person's body language kind of helps you in other interviews to kind of respond to that, to those questions. Going back, would I do anything different? I don't know. I just would be a little bit more confident, I guess, in the way that I presented myself. I know with anything, the University of Florida obviously puts out a lot of great candidates. And for you to be looking just for students from the university, you kind of have to really be very confident in what you can do and how you can present yourself, even if it's an internship and not just a job. So I think I would just be a little bit more confident. And I think that even pitching when I actually started working for you has really built up my confidence when it comes to interacting with people and being able to really sell what it is that I'm trying to talk about in any kind of way.
Episode 12 with Tiffany McKenney. Tiffany is fireworks. She really surprised me. I didn't think that when I brought her on as an intern that she was going to stick very long just because she had already graduated. And I have this rule that I don't usually, have graduated students work for me. They usually still have to be in school, but she really needed that internship. And so we crammed it in for Tiffany. We spent 6 months together. I told her she had to commit. And we had quite a few adventures. And I will always remember the Las Vegas story. Here's a bit of that. Which experience from the Las Vegas conference left the strongest impression on you and has maybe contributed to your professional development? Is there any thing that sticks out from that particular conference?
There is something in particular. I'm not sure if we can mention it on the podcast.
We can mention it.
I don't want to get too scandalous. But
let's get scandalous. Nobody talks about it. I want to hear it. What was the thing that jumped out to you the most that you still remember?
think this is one of my party stories too, where I'm like at a party and I'm like, the craziest thing happened to me when I was in Las Vegas with my boss. It was after a very long day. And from what I remember, I was only in Las Vegas for 48 hours at most. Like it was fly in that night, fly out the night after that, or it was a very short time period. We had a very long day. For those of you who don't go to conventions, it is 12-hour days, 14-hour days, 16-hour days. You are up at 8 a.m. before the convention starts, and you go to networking events after the convention floor closes, and you mingle and you talk with people, you rub elbows with clients and new business prospects as well. And I remember we went, it was the very last networking event at that night at a rooftop bar. Las Vegas is not where everything stays. There were gentlemen who were drinking excessively, as one does at these conventions. And as we were leaving, you picked up 2 gift bags, and we were stuck in an elevator with 3 very intoxicated gentlemen who then proceeded to talk to us, trying to get us to go back to their hotel room with them. One of them even asked if your panties were in the gift bag, if you remember, in which case you said, what you said something along the lines of, no, but your wife might enjoy the gift bag and your son, since you have that wedding ring on. And then and then I think you ended it on a high note. Well, like, enjoy your evening, guys. I'm single and I'm going back to my hotel room. Hope the night plays out in your best favor. But that stuck with me specifically because it is a part of those nuances that I was mentioning before, where sometimes as a professional, you are placed in these extremely, extremely uncomfortable situations, but you still are forced as a woman to put a business face on and kind of laugh it off, but also set your boundaries. So it was a really good example of a female professional in her career, in her environment. And that was not your first convention either, but it was a great example of how sometimes you do have to navigate these risque waters in a way, and you came out unscathed on the other side, and you still maintained that kind of professionalism, wit, funny, but still communicating your boundaries. So that's something that I took away with me.
Episode 14. Oh, Ladora, I love her so much. Ladora and I have the most extensive history of all the pitch stars. She came to me right out of Howard University, and pitch publicity was her first professional job. We had a break in there, which we explained why in the episode. But she came back and worked with me again, and we've just had so many great moments together working on different events. And I actually, in her episode, I didn't know this was going to happen, but we ended up talking a lot about motherhood. And here's what she had to say. I mean, looking back on it now, and I'm sure you had friends that did it in a different sequence. Maybe they got into their career first and maybe they're just having babies now. Would you have done anything differently? Are you glad that you did it in the order that you did?
Well, I could never, not have wanted my children when I had them. That was God's plan, and I went with it. But that being said, I think my preference would have been to start my career. When I came out of college, I kind of envisioned, really before college, I envisioned like this high-powered corporate communications career in New York City. That was my goal. That's how I envisioned my life. And so after school in DC, I ended up moving to Florida. And it's a much slower pace. There's no really metropolitan city area outside of Miami. And even that is just more like tropical and vacation vibes. So it didn't give me the same feeling as New York or even DC would. So making that adjustment mentally in my career and then having children on top of that, it was a challenge. But I don't regret having my children young because I'm not even 40 yet. And I still have
You're almost done.
I'm almost done. So I don't regret that. And yes, I have friends who have had children later in their careers, but I don't think anyone really regrets their choices. They just do the best of what they can at the time.
How has your experience as a mother influenced your professional growth? Because you did have children young, so maybe it made you have to grow up faster, or was there anything about motherhood that helped you in your professional career?
I think it helped me stay organized. I don't think I would have been so diligent about um getting things done in an organized fashion, knowing I have to be doing XYZ later on. So it really kind of made me detail what my daily, weekly, monthly schedule looks like, because I'm trying to juggle so many things and I don't want any of these balls to drop, right? So I think, again, having children young while married and trying to balance all these things in a new environment. I'm not from Florida. I'm not from where I currently live, although at this point I'm a Floridian. But I was juggling a lot of new things at once. And my personality aligns itself with organization. And so motherhood just added to that.
You had to be organized.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember during the time that you were working with me, I think we used almost every one of your family members in some TV segment or something.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
Episode 16 with Cameron Junk. Oh, this was so much fun. I still haven't met Cameron in person yet. She was one of my interns that came along during the pandemic years. She spent a semester with us, did as much as she thought she could do, and then went on. And Cameron's always been like that. She's just a mover and a shaker. And I'm so happy to see everything that she's doing. Even after we finished recording this episode, she went right on and got another job with Spirit Airlines doing their PR. So she is just very impressive, and a lot of her tips were very good. Here's one of them. How important is organization to what you're doing now? What have you learned about organization that makes you better at your job?
So organization is so important because it can be so easy to lose track of what pitch you sent what journalists and who you're pitching this week, especially if you're working in the more medical side and you're working with patients. What patients am I pitching this week? Who's available? Who's not available? So I kind of do a little bit of both. I have a Google Drive that has all of my folders on it, separated by here's the client, here's the pitch. I also have it for the event side of the business where here's this business event, here's this medical event, here's all the resources that go into it. But I also am I would say pen and paper, but I've switched to my iPad. So I'm an iPad and iPencil now. And every single day I have just the date at the top, and then I make a list of everything that I have to do. And I also have any of the leads that I have on there, as well as maybe the stories that we're going to be having airing. I had an interview yesterday for one of my clients, so I had that written down. And I'm remembering, okay, you need to follow up with them or text before. And of course, right before the interview starts, there's complications going on. So you have to remember, don't put your phone on do not disturb if there's an interview going on. Put that in your calendar. So staying organized is so important, because if a situation like that happens where you have an expert going to speak with the journalist and there's a complication and you're not there and the journalist doesn't have your expert's phone number, that interview could be over and you could not get rescheduled. So it's so important just to know what's going on in your day-to-day. Also, in terms of what's going on with your interviews, Pitch was very, very organized in that sense. You had everything laid out. Here's what we have upcoming. Here's what we've done. Do you want to see every interview you've ever booked? Here's all of them. So it definitely was fantastic in that sense of just like kind of ingraining that into me when I was first starting out.
Episode 18, Kylie Morgan. Kylie is the calmest intern I've ever worked with, but also the most productive. She kept me calm. I'm usually on edge all the time and pushing people hard. And I talked about with Kylie something that I still use today, and I call it the Kylie okay. Here's what we said about it. I recall moments when I would become super intense and make demands, and you would just simply respond with, okay. And it wasn't like, okay, or like, it was just a very calm, okay. And I remember it instantly diffusing the tension that I felt and just kind of prompted me to go into problem solving mode. And this approach has stuck with me so much that I still use, I call it the Kylie okay technique when I'm faced with like demanding or stressful communications from my clients, even. If a client's demanding thing, or they're upset about something, or they don't know what's going on, or they want me to do something and do this and do that, I just respond, okay. And it always diffuses it, because I'm not I'm not coming back with some defensive response, or it's just like, okay, you want me to do that? Okay. Where did you learn that?
So I think I always default in like stressful situations to just focusing on what's important and how you can kind of achieve the end goal. And like the rest can just get figured out later. So I think that's one of the traits I have that definitely has been put to use all the time in my PR career, because yeah, so many times clients are coming to us and they come to us to solve their problems. So I think by just diffusing the situation and just handling it the best you can is just always the best way to approach the situations. And there's so many moving parts between clients and media and so many problems that can come up every day. And it's so funny. I actually just got that same feedback from a client. We had an event recently, and there was an issue with the hotel reservations. We had media coming in, and basically I got it figured out very quickly, thankfully. But our client was like, you really calmed me down, because you were calm, and it just puts people at ease. And something about PR is a lot of people don't see what's going on behind the scenes. So, none of the media had any idea there was such an issue. So I feel like if you just remain calm and approach things, sometimes you have to look at the big picture and just how you can get to your end goal. And yeah, I use that every single day.
Episode 20 with Lakendra Tooks. Oh my gosh, you're just gonna get ready to laugh. Lakendra is all comedy. She has had such an impressive career in the entertainment industry, starting at Saturday Night Live. So it was really fun to go back and revisit that. I think sometimes we see things in our careers as failures or incompletes, but I really believe that Saturday Night Live started out Lakendra's career with a bang, and I love seeing where she's at today. And I love that we had the opportunity to work together. But I want you to hear a little bit about what she said about pitching on Saturday Night Live.
On Monday, we all pile into Lorne Michaels' office, and the host sits in the middle. So the host, let's say this week our host is Amy Summers. So you're sitting in the middle, right in front of Lorne Michaels' desk. And then we're all, me and everyone else, Kenan Thompson, like all these like very funny people are there. And you, like on my very first day, Drake was the host. So we had to sit there. I'm like, Drake, he's so dreamy, by the way, in person. It's like, so I had to sit there. It's my first day. I'm nervous. I'm scared. But you still just have to, you got to just say it. And you got to say it like from your chest. You got to say, hey, here's my idea. It's hilarious. You're going to love it, because then you also have to convince the other people in the room, the more experienced people in the room, to maybe want to write it with you. You got to convince Kenan Thompson to want to be in your sketch as well. You know what I'm saying? So it's very scary. And what I would do, we do the table read, very scary, very nerve-wracking the whole time. And then I would not wear mascara because I would likely be crying if one of my sketches did not make it onto the board. Because like we do the table read of like 40 sketches, but only like 10 to 12 are going to make it onto the show. So it's really hard, and it's very, very scary. I mean, opportunity of a lifetime opened so many doors for me, eternally, forever grateful. And it was such a wonderful experience. It was a dream, but it's very scary. And if I could turn back the hands of time, I wish I would have been more confident during that time. I think is that imposter syndrome, where you feel like you're not qualified to be somewhere? And I felt like that a long time while I was there.
Episode 22, Lee Hathaway. Oh, I will never forget the day I met Lee. I was at a conference. He was at this, he came up to us at a table. I was with some other people, asked us if he could stand there. I gave him a really smart alecky remark, and he gave it right back to me. And ever since then, we've just had great energy together. I love seeing all the things that he's doing in the world that are so positive. And he's such an inspiration. Take a listen to this. How do you overcome the fear of trying something new?
You know, like this always comes to mind. It's just show up. You know, if you're giving something and you commit, that's all you're asked to do is show up, you know, and then from each experience from there, you gain what you need to do to move forward. When you fall into a job like Disney, there's so many positions you can go into. And so, you know, it was interesting. I knew what I wanted to do there, but the job entailed that I kept auditioning as much as I needed to keep my job. As far as every season would come in, new parades. So there was constantly competition. And, you know, and I talked to people telling me I performed at Disneyland for as long as I did, you know, they're like, oh, you're a dancer. And I'm like, no, I'm a performer. Like I can perform. You give me something and I'll do it. That's actually, you know, one of the things that I learned through Disney and just showing up is like, you know, you'll be given something and you'll learn it. And there was one challenge during the block party bash that we had during the 50th anniversary where the movements were hard and I'd never been trained, but the choreographers took some of us that had difficulties and worked with our feet enough that we gained that confidence of like, you know what, we're not dancers, but you know, when I would do that parade, I had a specific choreographer that was an old school veteran parade performer, very respected. And so one day he came up to me, he's like, you know, you dance this parade like it should be danced. And I was like, oh, he's talking about, you know, they gave me something and I just naturally let it happen. And no one's ever going to fault you for that. I learned in the end because they kept hiring me. So, you know, like I always remember that nervousness. And like, you know, the good thing is that I had friends there that we could just be goofy in front of and fail if we needed to. But for some reason they kept me, you know, and so that made me love my job at the time, you know, like
it sounds like you got a good piece of mentorship there in that moment.
I did.
Well, thank you everybody for going down memory lane with me with our first season here at Pitch Live. And if you did miss any of the episodes, I hope that you have time to maybe go back and binge them. Maybe you can spend your holiday doing that or whatever time period you're in right now. And there's really a lot of good advice, a lot of nuggets of information. And again, I think that the reason why I really wanted to start this podcast about pitching is because it's something that we don't really learn in school or in a structured way. We tend to learn it from others. So in this time where many people are remote and hybrid and we're really not around other people much, this is a cram course in pitching. So if you watch these episodes, you're going to pick up so many tidbits and advice that you'll be able to apply right away. I know that I have already taken a lot of the advice of many of the professionals and even some of my pitch stars. I still continue to learn from them. So I hope that you have enjoyed this, that you will keep learning and striving to reach your goals and to make success happen, or as we say, make shit happen. And I can't wait to see you next year for season 2 of Pitch Live. We have a lot of exciting guests coming on, and I will see you soon.